When Earth Struck Back, First Document. The massive space station, Harmony Prime, floated in the void between star systems, its crystalline towers gleaming under the light of distant suns. Inside the central chamber, beings from across the galaxy gathered for what they believed would be a routine council meeting. The Zephyrians with their flowing tentacles, the rock-skinned Gorvani, the insectoid Krex, and dozens of other species filled the amphitheater-like space. Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire tapped his communication device with one of his smaller appendages. The holographic display showed a small blue planet rotating slowly in the darkness of space. Earth, a backwater world that had recently achieved faster-than-light travel and dared to request membership in the Galactic Council. Fellow council members, Veltar's voice echoed through the chamber, translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously. We gather today to address the application from the species that calls itself humanity. They inhabit the third planet of a system they call Sul. Chittering laughter filled the air as the Krex delegate, Zixthara, raised one of her four arms. Surely this is some kind of joke. These creatures have barely crawled out of their gravity well. They still use chemical rockets for most of their transportation. More laughter rippled through the assembly. The Gorvani representative, a boulder-like being named Throck, rumbled his agreement. They have been in space for less than 200 of their planetary cycles. My species was building interstellar highways when theirs was still throwing rocks at each other. Veltar nodded, his tentacles swaying with satisfaction. Indeed. But there is more. Our intelligence reports indicate they are a violent species. They have waged war upon themselves for their entire recorded history. In their most recent global conflict, they created weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. The chamber fell into a brief hush before erupting in shocked gasps and concerned murmurs. The ethereal representative, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering field, pulsed with agitation. Weapons of planetary destruction. How are they still alive? Barely, Veltar replied with what could have been amusement. They came very close to extinction several times. They pollute their own world, overconsume their resources, and seem incapable of unified action on even the most basic survival needs. Zixthara clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. Why do they even want to join the council? What could such primitive beings hope to gain? The holographic display shifted, showing intercepted human transmissions. Images of sleek ships, space stations under construction, and bustling colonies on nearby moons filled the air above the delegates. Veltar gestured dismissively at the images. They claim to offer innovation and fresh perspectives. They have made some crude advances in what they call artificial intelligence and genetic manipulation, but nothing that surpasses our existing technologies. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. They also speak of something they call the human spirit, as if courage and determination are unique to their species. The laughter that followed was even louder this time. Throck's voice boomed above the rest. Every species believes they are special. The universe has taught us all better. As the mirth died down, Veltar raised himself to his full height, his tentacles spreading wide in a gesture of authority. The Zephyrian Empire moves to reject the human application for membership. Furthermore, I propose we establish a quarantine zone around their system. They are too dangerous and unpredictable to be allowed free movement throughout civilized space. Seconded, rumbled Throck immediately. Agreed, clicked Zixthara. One by one, the delegates voiced their support. The few who might have offered different perspectives remained silent, unwilling to oppose the clear consensus of the major powers. Within minutes, the vote was unanimous. The ethereal being pulsed once more, this time with what seemed like satisfaction. Let the record show that the species designation human has been rejected for council membership and that System Sol is hereby placed under indefinite quarantine. No ships are to enter or leave without explicit council authorization. Veltar activated his communicator again, this time opening a channel to the human delegation waiting in a small ship at the edge of the neutral zone. The face that appeared on the screen was unremarkable by galactic standards. 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, pale skin, and hair the color of autumn leaves on Veltar's homeworld. "Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Alliance," Veltar began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "The Galactic Council has reviewed your species' application for membership." The human's expression remained neutral, though Veltar noticed her hands were clasped tightly behind her back. "I'm listening, Ambassador Veltar." "Your application has been rejected. Your species lacks the maturity, stability, and peaceful nature required for membership in our community. Furthermore, a quarantine has been established around your system. Any attempt to leave will be considered an act of aggression." For a long moment, Captain Chen said nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, almost conversational. "I see. And this decision is final?" "Completely final," Veltar confirmed. "Perhaps in a few thousand years, when your species has evolved beyond its current primitive state, you may reapply." The human's lips curved into something that might have been a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you for your time, Ambassador. We'll relay your decision to Earth." The communication ended, and Veltar turned back to his fellow delegates with satisfaction. "A minor irritation has been dealt with. Now shall we move on to more important matters?" But thousands of light years away, Captain Sarah Chen was already composing a message that would change everything. She had listened to every word, recorded every slight, and noted every assumption the Council had made about humanity. As her ship turned toward the long journey home, she began drafting a report that would reach every human colony, every military installation, and every research facility in their corner of the galaxy. The message was simple. They think we're too dangerous to join their club, but too weak to be a threat. They're about to learn how wrong they can be. Back on Harmony Prime, the delegates continued their meeting, discussing trade agreements and territorial disputes with the casual arrogance of beings who had never faced a real challenge to their authority. They had dealt with ambitious species before, young civilizations that dreamed of joining the great powers of the galaxy. Some were absorbed peacefully, others were crushed when they overstepped their bounds. All had learned their place in the cosmic order. None of them suspected that they had just made the greatest mistake in Galactic. When Earth struck back. Second document. Admiral Marcus Kane stood before the massive holographic display in the war room deep beneath the Rockies. The three-dimensional map showed the entire galaxy, with red zones marking Council territory and blue dots representing human colonies and outposts. The quarantine line glowed an ominous orange, surrounding their entire solar system like a cage. 6 months, Kane said, his voice cutting through the murmur of conversation among the assembled officers and scientists. 6 months since they told us we weren't good enough for their little club. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the head of the Human Defense Initiative's Research Division, stepped forward. "The quarantine has actually worked in our favor, Admiral. They're so convinced of their superiority that they've ignored what we've been doing. Their Sentinel ships check in once a week, but they never venture close enough to see our real preparations." Kane nodded grimly. "Show them what we've accomplished." The holographic display shifted, now showing the hidden construction sites scattered throughout the asteroid belt. Massive shipyards, each one larger than any space station humanity had ever built, hummed with activity. Thousands of workers, both human and robotic, labored around the clock to complete humanity's response to the galactic community's rejection. "Project Prometheus," Dr. Vasquez announced. "While they assumed we would sulk and accept their judgment, we've been building the largest fleet in human history, not for exploration or trade, but for war." The ships taking shape in those hidden yards were unlike anything humanity had ever conceived before. Sleek, black and bristling with weapons that combined human innovation with reverse-engineered alien technology. Every crashed probe, every artifact recovered from ancient sites, every scrap of advanced technology humanity had ever encountered had been studied, improved upon, and weaponized. Captain Chen, recently promoted to Fleet Commander, gestured to a smaller display showing detailed schematics. The Galactic Council's biggest mistake was assuming our violent nature was a weakness. They never considered that a species that survived 10,000 years of warfare might have learned something valuable about combat. The ships were marvels of human engineering, designed with lessons learned from centuries of conflict. They were fast, maneuverable, and equipped with redundant systems that could function even under massive damage. More importantly, they were crewed by beings who understood that sometimes survival required the willingness to do whatever it takes. Their technology is superior, Admiral Kane admitted, studying the readouts. But their tactics are thousands of years old. They've grown complacent, fighting the same ritualized battles against each other for millennia. They've never faced an enemy that thinks like us. The humans had spent months analyzing every piece of Council intelligence they could gather. The great galactic powers fought wars like grand chess games, with formal declarations, established battle lines, and rules of engagement that both sides respected. It was civilized, predictable, and completely foreign to human military thinking. Commander Lisa Park, the fleet's tactical coordinator, highlighted several key points on the galactic map. The Council's military doctrine relies on massive dreadnought-class vessels fighting at extreme range. They prioritize firepower and shields over speed and maneuverability. Their fleets are designed to overwhelm opponents through superior technology, not superior strategy. Dr. Vasquez activated another display, this one showing the Council's communication networks. They also rely heavily on centralized command structures. Take out their command ships, and entire fleets become confused and disorganized. They've never developed the kind of distributed command systems we use. Admiral Kane smiled grimly. Because they've never faced an enemy desperate enough to target command vessels directly. In their civilized wars, destroying leadership is considered barbaric. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was about to introduce the galaxy to a very different kind of warfare, asymmetric, unpredictable, and utterly ruthless when survival was at stake. Fleet Commander Chen brought up the final component of their plan. Operation Exodus is ready for implementation. Every human colony outside the quarantine zone has been secretly evacuated and relocated to hidden bases in uncharted systems. As far as the Council knows, those colonies are still functioning normally. They've been replaced with automated systems broadcasting fake communications. This was perhaps the most audacious part of the human strategy. While the Council watched their obvious colonies and bases, humanity had been secretly building an entire parallel civilization in the void between star systems. Mobile habitats, hidden supply depots, and concealed shipyards spread across thousands of light years, all connected by a network of stealth communication relays. The Council thinks they know where we are and what we're capable of, Admiral Kane said. They're wrong on both counts. When we move, we won't be defending fixed positions they can target. We'll be everywhere and nowhere, striking from directions they don't expect at targets they can't defend. The assembled officers exchanged glances, filled with determination and nervous excitement. They all understood the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. Humanity was about to declare war on the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, using nothing but their wits, their fury, and their refusal to accept defeat. Dr. Vasquez activated one last display, showing the current disposition of Council forces. Intelligence indicates the major fleets are spread across their territories, dealing with routine patrol duties and minor border disputes. They have no reason to expect a coordinated attack from a species they consider barely capable of spaceflight. How many ships do they have compared to us? asked Commander Park. In total, about 50,000 major vessels across all Council species, Dr. Vasquez replied. We'll have 800 ships when the last batch is completed next week. The numbers should have been daunting, but Admiral Kane felt only cold satisfaction. David versus Goliath. But this time, David has a plan. Fleet Commander Chen stepped forward, her expression determined. The first phase of Operation Prometheus launches in 72 hours. We begin with simultaneous strikes on their early warning networks and communication relays. They'll be blind and deaf before they even know we're coming. Around the room, officers began finalizing their preparations. Each had tracks when Earth struck back. Third document. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos. Harmony Prime's pristine chambers now echoed with panicked voices speaking dozens of languages simultaneously. The massive holographic display that usually showed peaceful trade routes now painted a picture of devastation across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Ambassador Veltar's tentacles writhed with agitation as he tried to process the reports flooding in from across Zephyrian space. Impossible, he whispered, staring at the tactical readouts. 17 military installations destroyed in the past 8 hours. All communication relays in the outer sectors are offline. How is this possible? Commander Throck's rocky exterior showed stress fractures that hadn't been there a day ago. The humans, he rumbled, his voice carrying a tremor that would have been unthinkable just days before. Somehow they've broken the quarantine, but our sensors showed nothing. How did they get past our defenses? Across the galaxy, the answer to his question was being written in fire and twisted metal. Human strike forces, using ships that were smaller, faster, and more agile than anything the Council had ever faced, appeared without warning at crucial infrastructure targets. They struck with surgical precision, destroying exactly what they intended, and then vanishing before response forces could arrive. The humans had learned the galaxy's weaknesses by studying its greatest strength. The Council's vast communication network, which allowed instantaneous coordination across hundreds of star systems, relied on heavily defended but stationary relay stations. The humans simply bypassed the defenses entirely, using small, fast ships to deliver devastating attacks before jumping away through previously unknown hyperspace routes. Zixthera's compound eyes darted frantically between multiple displays, trying to track the human attacks. They're targeting our command and control system specifically. Whoever is planning this understands our military doctrine better than we do ourselves. As if summoned by their confusion, the central display flickered and changed. Instead of tactical data, it now showed the bridge of a human vessel. Fleet Commander Chen appeared before them, but she looked very different from the woman who had politely accepted their rejection 6 months ago. Her uniform was military black, her expression was cold as space itself, and her eyes held the kind of determination that had carried humanity through centuries of conflict. "Members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice cutting through their panicked chatter like a blade. "I am Fleet Commander Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Force. You remember me." Veltar found his voice first, though it cracked with disbelief. "This is impossible. You're under quarantine. Our sensors would have detected any attempt to leave your system." Chen's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. "Your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect. While you watched our colonies and our obvious military installations, we built an entirely new civilization in the spaces between your stars. You never thought to look for us where you were certain we couldn't exist." The implications hit the Council delegates like a physical blow. If the humans had been operating undetected for months, if they had military forces positioned throughout the galaxy while the Council remained completely unaware, then everything they thought they knew about their security was wrong. "What do you want?" Throck demanded, his usual arrogance replaced by barely controlled fear. "What we wanted 6 months ago," Chen replied simply. Recognition, respect, and most importantly, the right to exist without your permission. She gestured, and the display split to show simultaneous views of human operations across the galaxy. Council fleets found themselves engaged with enemy forces that fought like nothing they had ever encountered. The humans used swarm tactics, coordinated strikes from multiple vectors, and seemed completely unconcerned with the rules of galactic warfare. You told us we were too violent to join your civilized community, Chen continued. You were right about our violent nature, but you failed to understand what that violence meant when it was focused and directed by intelligence, planning, and absolute determination. The ethereal representative pulsed with alarm. You cannot hope to defeat the combined might of the Council. We outnumber you 100 to 1. Numbers, Chen said dismissively. You're thinking like the advanced civilization you claim to be. We're thinking like the survivors we've always been. We don't need to conquer every world or destroy every ship. We just need to make it clear that the cost of oppressing us is higher than the benefit of leaving us alone. As if to emphasize her point, new reports flooded in. The humans weren't trying to hold territory or establish permanent positions. They struck, caused maximum damage to military and economic targets, then disappeared. They were fighting a guerrilla war on a galactic scale, using the galaxy's own size against it. Veltar's tentacles curled in frustration. What are your terms? Simple, Chen replied. The quarantine ends immediately. The Council formally recognizes humanity's right to exist and travel freely throughout the galaxy. Any species that wishes to maintain peaceful relations with us may do so. Any species that attempts to restrict our movement or threaten our people will discover that we have very long memories and very creative methods of expressing our displeasure. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. The idea of negotiating with what they considered a primitive species was almost incomprehensible. But the tactical displays didn't lie. Human forces were currently engaged with council fleets across dozens of star systems, and they were winning. You're criminals, Zixthera clicked angrily. Terrorists! The civilized galaxy will never accept this. Chen's expression didn't change. The civilized galaxy created this situation when it decided to cage us like animals. You wanted us to be your prisoners. Instead, we became your problem. The choice of how this ends is still yours, but it will end our way regardless. Throck slammed a massive fist on his console. Even if we agreed, how do we know you won't continue these attacks? Because, Chen said simply, we never wanted to fight you. We wanted to join you. All of this could have been avoided if you had treated us with even basic respect. We're not interested in conquest or domination. We just refuse to be anyone's prisoners. The truth of her words was evident in their tactics. The humans had demonstrated they could strike anywhere, any time, but they had focused exclusively on military and infrastructure targets. No civilian populations had been harmed. No worlds had been invaded. This was a war fought with surgical precision to achieve specific political goals, not the random violence of primitive savages. Admiral Kane's voice joined the transmission from another ship. We've studied your histories, Council members. Every one of your species went through a phase like this. The moment when you had to choose between submission and independence. The difference is that when your time came, there was no galactic community to cage you and tell you that you weren't worthy of freedom. The silence that followed was deafening. The Council delegates looked at each other, recognizing the uncomfortable truth in the humans' words. They had all fought for their independence once, had all refused to accept the limitations others tried to place on them. Veltar's voice, when he finally spoke, was barely above a whisper. If we agree to your terms, will the attacks stop immediately? The moment the quarantine beacons are shut down and our status as a free people is formally recognized, Chen confirmed. We have no interest in prolonged warfare. but we also have no intention of living in a cage. The vote, when it came, was swift and unanimous. The cost of continued conflict was simply too high, and the humans had proven they could make that cost even higher if necessary. Within hours, the quarantine was lifted, and humanity was granted the recognition they had originally sought. But the galaxy had changed forever. The old assumptions about power, technology, and civilization had been shattered by a species that refused to accept the limitations others tried to place on them. The humans had proven that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is not the one with the biggest weapons, but the one with the strongest will. As human ships emerged from hiding throughout the galaxy, no longer concealing their presence, the other species watched with a mixture of fear and grudging respect. The age of casual dominance by the established powers was over. A new player had entered the galactic game, and they had made it clear that they intended to play by their own rules. The Council still ruled most of the galaxy, but they would never again make the mistake of underestimating a species simply because it was young or different. The humans had earned their place at the table not through ancient heritage or technological superiority, but through the simple, undeniable fact that they refused to be denied. And in the end, that made all the difference. Aimed for this moment, understanding that humanity's survival as a free species depended on the next few weeks. They were about to prove that sometimes the greatest civilizations fall not to superior technology or overwhelming force, but to an enemy that refuses to play by the established rules. As the meeting dispersed, Admiral Kane remained behind, staring at the galactic map. Soon, those red zones marking Council territory would be very different. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans said "never again," they meant it with every fiber of their being. The Council had made their choice when they decided humanity was too dangerous to trust, but too weak to fear. Now they were about to discover just how wrong a supposedly advanced civilization could be about a species they had dismissed as primitive savages. The countdown had begun, and there would be no stopping what came next. History. In rejecting humanity and imposing a quarantine, they had not contained a threat. They had created one. And soon, very soon, they would discover what the human spirit really meant when it was unleashed upon an unsuspecting galaxy. The council session ended with the same pomp and ceremony as always, with delegates returning to their ships and their home systems, secure in their superiority and confident in their power. The quarantine beacons were activated, automated sentries began their patrol routes, and the galaxy continued to turn as it always had. But deep in the Sol system, on a small blue planet that most of the galaxy now considered beneath notice, humanity was about to prove that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one you underestimate.